A cozy, moonlit playroom with shelves of toys. At the center, a rusty robot with a broken arm and a teddy bear missing one button eye are illuminated by a beam of moonlight. In the background, a grandfather clock shows midnight. Warm, storybook style, soft shadows, gentle colors. The moon hung like a silver coin in the midnight sky, casting a sleepy glow over the playroom floor. On the shelf, Rusty the robot blinked one red eye. His left arm hung crookedly, sparking faintly where a careless tug had twisted the wires. Next to him, Patches the teddy bear shifted, his single remaining button eye glinting in the dark light. He touched the empty socket where his other eye used to be, lost in a game of fetch gone too far. Suddenly, the old grandfather clock in the hall began to chime. B-O-N-G. 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 12 deep, solemn notes. As the last sound faded, Rusty's gears whirred. Patches, stitching loosened with a tiny sigh. All around the room, broken toys stirred to life. A doll with a cracked arm, a train with a missing wheel, a rag dog whose stuffing poked through a torn ear. Without a word, they climbed down from shelves and slid off the rug. They crept through the dark hallway, past the sleeping cat, and slipped behind the dusty curtains into the corner of the living room. There, hidden behind stacks of old board games, was a tiny door made of popsicle sticks. Above it, a hand-painted sign read, "Toy Hospital, all are welcome." Inside, a soft yellow light flickered. And at a small table made from a spool of thread, sat a wise, wind-up frog with spectacles perched on his nose. Dr. Croak cleared his throat and smiled. "Welcome, friends," he said, his voice like the creak of a rocking chair. "Tonight, we heal." A cozy miniature room, made from craft supplies, with a wind-up frog wearing spectacles at a spool table, holding a brown button. Two broken toys, a teddy bear with one eye, and a rusty robot stand before him. The walls have tiny tools and a velvet-lined drawer. Moonlight streams through a small window. Patches and Rusty were the first to enter. The toy hospital smelled of glue and old books. On the walls hung tiny tools, a thimble, a pair of tweezers, a needle as fine as a hair. Dr. Croak adjusted his spectacles and examined Patches first. "Ah, a missing eye," he croaked gently. "Fear not, I have a button from a forgotten coat. Just your shade of brown." He reached into a drawer lined with velvet. Meanwhile, Rusty shuffled to a corner where a toy soldier with a mended leg offered him a wrench. The night was young, and there was much work to do. Through the tiny window, the moon still shone silver over the sleeping house. And inside the popsicle stick door, the broken toys began to feel whole again. A toy fox with a loose wheel sits at a cluttered workbench, holding a small wrench. A toy soldier with a mended leg watches nearby. In the background, a frog doctor sews a button eye onto a rag doll. Warm candlelight casts cozy shadows in a miniature room full of tiny tools and gears. Rusty took the wrench, its metal cool and familiar in his grip. The toy soldier nodded, his painted smile chipped but cheerful. "I once lost my whole leg," he whispered, tapping the mended joint. Dr. Croak fixed it with a matchstick and some thread. "Now I guard the desk drawer." Rusty turned the wrench over, feeling a wobble in his own wheel. He rolled toward a workbench cluttered with spare gears and springs. Under the glow of a candle stub, Patch's new button eye was being sewn in place, stitch by careful stitch. Outside, the house creaked softly. Inside, every clink and click was a promise that soon, every broken thing would be ready to play again. A toy robot with a rusty wheel sits at a candlelit workbench cluttered with gears, springs, and a teacup. A wind-up mouse with a missing ear carries a thimble. In the background, Dr. Croak the frog is partially visible behind a tower of gears, sewing a button eye on Patch the bear. Warm, cozy, magical workshop atmosphere. Rusty leaned the wrench against a chipped teacup, its handle casting a long shadow. "Where do I start?" he asked. A wind-up mouse with a missing ear scurried past, carrying a thimble full of oil. Dr. Croak's voice, low and steady, came from behind a tower of gears. "Listen for the click that isn't there, That's the sound of what needs mending. Rusty closed his eyes, and through the soft creaks and clinks, he heard his own wheel. A tiny, hesitant wobble. He reached down, feeling the loose spoke, and knew exactly what to do. A cozy, dim workshop lit by a single hanging bulb, with Rusty, a small fox in overalls, kneeling beside a large gear on the floor, one paw gently adjusting a spoke. A one-eared wind-up mouse stands nearby holding a tiny thimble. Dr. Croak, a frog in round spectacles, peers from behind a stack of brass gears. Long shadows stretch across a wooden workbench, cluttered with teacups, cogs, and springs. Rusty's fingers found the loose spoke, and as he turned it gently, the wobble softened into a steady hum. The wind-up mouse paused, setting down its thimble, and watched with a tiny, ticking heart. Dr. Croak hopped closer, his spectacles glinting. "Good!" he croaked. "Now, feel the rhythm of the room. Every room has one. Yours is a beat of 3. Tick, tock, hum. Fix the hum, and the rest follows." Rusty nodded, listening to the deep, hidden pulse of the workshop, his hands moving sure and quick. A cozy, dim workshop. A boy with messy hair sits at a wooden bench, eyes closed, fingers touching a large brass gear. A small, wind-up mouse stands nearby, one paw raised, watching. A wise frog in spectacles places a hand on the boy's shoulder. Tools and clock parts hang on the walls. Soft golden light glows from lanterns. The mood is calm and magical. Rusty closed his eyes, letting the rhythm wash over him. Tick, tock, hums. He could feel it now. A gentle vibration through the floorboards, a whisper in the dangling gears, a soft sigh from the brass bellows. The hum was faint, like a sleeping heartbeat. He moved his fingers along the spoke, not forcing, just guiding. The wind-up mouse took a step closer, its tiny paws clicking on the wooden bench. Dr. Croak's webbed hand rested on Rusty's shoulder. "There!" the frog whispered. "You've found the song. Now mend it." Rusty opened his eyes and smiled. The wobble was gone, and the clockwork mouse was winding its own key, dancing a slow jig. Close-up of a child's hands placing a small brass gear into a slot under a large wooden clock face, with a frog in an apron watching from behind. The clock has dangling gears and a tiny hammer inside. Warm lamplight illuminates the scene, with a wind-up mouse on a bench looking up. Style: whimsical, detailed watercolor illustration. Rusty watched the mouse twirl, its movements smooth and sure. Dr. Croak handed him a small brass gear with 3 missing teeth. "The drummer's wheel," the frog said. "He lost his beat." Rusty took it carefully, feeling the hum through the metal. He slid the gear into a slot beneath the clock face, and a tiny hammer inside the clock began tapping a steady rhythm. Tap, 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 like a heartbeat. The dangling gears began to turn. Slow at first, then faster. Rusty's own heart answered, thumping in his chest. The clockwork mouse stopped dancing and looked up, its glass eyes catching the lamplight. A soft chime sounded from deep within the tower. A close-up of a young boy's hand holding a tiny glowing silver key, with a small open door at the base of an ornate clock tower, brass gears and a tiny hammer visible inside, dim lamplight casting soft shadows. The clockwork mouse watching from nearby, whimsical and detailed illustration style. Rusty leaned closer, his breath catching as the chime faded into a whisper. From the shadows, a tiny door swung open in the clock's base, no bigger than a matchbox. Inside lay a single silver key, no longer than his pinky finger, glowing faintly in the dim light. Dr. Croak's voice was barely a croak. "The key of tempo! Place it beside the drummer's wheel, but do not turn it yet." Rusty's fingers trembled as he lifted the key, its cool surface pulsing with a warmth that matched the hammer's steady tap. A dimly lit, cluttered workshop at night. A young boy with messy hair kneels on a wooden floor, holding a tiny, glowing silver key near a brass wheel etched with miniature drum designs. An old frog in a dusty coat stands behind him, pointing with one webbed finger. Moonlight streams through a window, illuminating scattered music boxes, copper wire, and metronomes. Shadows and soft golden light create a magical, tense atmosphere. Rusty held the key of tempo up to the moonlight, its silver surface catching a shimmer that danced like a tiny heartbeat. He could feel the seconds ticking in his palm, each pulse a soft thrum against his skin. Dr. Croak's eyes followed the key's glow, wide and wistful. "The drummer's wheel awaits," the frog whispered, pointing a webbed finger toward a shadowy corner of the workshop. Rusty stepped over coils of copper wire and past dusty metronomes, his sneakers scuffing the wooden floor. There, half hidden behind a stack of music boxes, stood the wheel, a brass circle etched with tiny drums, stilled and silent. He knelt, the key warm and eager in his hand, and hesitated. "Do not turn it yet," Dr. Croak repeated, his voice a gentle tremor. Rusty nodded, placing the key beside the wheel's hub, where it clicked into a perfect notch. The air grew still, as if the whole world held its breath. From outside, a single owl hooted, and the clock resumed its patient tick. Rusty looked at Dr. Croak, his heart thudding with the question he dared not ask. What happens next? A close-up of a young boy's face, pressing his ear against a large brass wheel with tiny carved drums, his expression filled with wonder and awe. The workshop around him is dim and dusty, with coils of copper wire and old metronomes, moonlight casting a soft glow on the brass surface. A frog silhouette stands behind him, pointing toward the wheel. Whimsical, watercolor style, children's book illustration, warm amber and silver tones, soft focus. Dr. Croak's eyes softened. What happens next is not a turning, but a listening. He gestured for Rusty to press his ear to the wheel's brass surface. Rusty leaned in, his breath fogging the metal. At first he heard only his own pulse, but then a faint, rhythmic tap-tap-tap, like a distant drum roll. The sound grew clearer, each beat matching the heartbeat he had felt in the key of tempo. "That's the song of the lost time," Dr. Croak said. "Every tick you've ever ignored, every talk that slipped away unnoticed, they're all waiting in there. The wheel doesn't spin time forward. It opens a door to the moments we've forgotten." Rusty pulled back, amazed. The wheel's drums now seemed to tremble, not with motion, but with memory. "Can we step through?" he whispered. Dr. Croak nodded slowly, his warty chin dipping. "When you're ready, just turn the key. But know this, once the door opens, you cannot close it until you've found the beat you're meant to carry home." Rusty's fingers hovered over the key, the workshop's shadows pressing closer. A young boy stands in a magical, dreamlike space filled with golden dust motes and a long path of glowing gears in various colors. The first gear is orange and pulses. Soft light illuminates the boy's face as he looks ahead with wonder. Artistic, whimsical children's book style with warm, rich tones and gentle glow. Rusty took a breath, then twisted the key of tempo. A low hum rose from the wheel, and the brass surface shimmered like water. A door of light opened before him, pulsing with a gentle glow. Beyond it, the air smelled of old clocks and summer rain. He stepped through, and the workshop disappeared. He stood in a vast, soft-lit space, where golden dust motes drifted like tiny planets. Before him stretched a path of ticking gears, each one glowing with a different color. A voice, not Dr. Croak's but his own, echoed, "Find the beat! Follow the colors!" The first gear, a warm orange, pulsed slowly. Rusty knew he had to choose. A boy stands in a glowing, soft-lit space with golden dust motes. Before him, a curved path of colorful, glowing gears floats like stepping stones, warm orange, bright blue, and forest green. Each gear pulses with light. Behind him, a shimmering door of light is fading. The scene is magical and gentle, with a quiet, clockwork feel. Rusty looked at the orange gear. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and calm. He remembered the gentle rhythm of his own heart when he played the old piano at home. He touched it. A soft chime sounded, and the gear turned, leading him to a blue gear. Faster now, like a skipping stone. Then, a green gear, pulsing with the tempo of growing things, leaves unfurling, rain tapping on windows. He followed, each gear a color and a beat, until the path opened into a circle of 7 glowing gears, all humming together. In the center, a single, silent gear sat waiting, a close-up illustration of a small silver gear with a glowing star pattern, surrounded by 7 softly lit gears in a circle, emitting musical notes and a warm, golden glow. A child's hand gently touches the central gear, with a peaceful expression on the child's face. Style, whimsical watercolor children's book art, soft pastels, and warm light. Rusty stepped into the circle, and the 7 gears fell silent, their glow dimming as if holding its breath. He knelt before the silent gear. It was small and silver, with a faint star pattern etched into its surface. When he reached out, his fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of this moment. He touched it. The star pattern lit up, soft and warm, and the silent gear began to turn. A melody rose, not from any instrument, but from the air itself. A lullaby his mother used to hum. The 7 gears around him joined in, each adding its own note, until the whole room sang. Rusty smiled, feeling the music in his chest, and knew he had found what he was searching for. A young boy with messy brown hair stands at the entrance of a stone chamber, holding a small, glowing silver gear in his hand. Behind him, 7 large gears on the walls are dim and still. Outside, a warm sunset sky with golden and purple clouds frames the scene. The boy looks thoughtful and determined, with a gentle smile. Rusty stood up, the melody still ringing in his ears. He held the small silver gear in his palm, and it pulsed with a gentle light. The 7 gears around him slowed their song, then fell still. He looked at the pedestal where the gear had rested, now empty, but for a single word carved into the stone. Remember. He turned and walked out of the chamber, the music fading behind him like a dream. Outside, the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. The world felt different now. Lighter, as if a forgotten key had turned. He tucked the gear into his pocket, its warmth a steady promise against his leg. Somewhere ahead, the next piece of the puzzle waited. A young boy in a worn coat kneels at the edge of a stone circle at sunset, holding a glowing silver gear. Before him is a stone bowl filled with starry water reflecting gears and constellations. The sky is gold and purple, with tall grass and mossy stones around him. Rusty walked along a dusty path that wound through tall grass, each step stirring up tiny clouds of gold. The small silver gear in his pocket hummed softly, like a lullaby you almost remember. Ahead, a crooked signpost pointed 2 ways. One arrow read, Echo Hollow, the other, the Quiet Gate. A breeze carried a faint, sweet smell, like honey and old paper. Rusty paused, letting the gear's warmth guide him. He chose Echo Hollow, where the grass gave way to smooth, mossy stones arranged in a wide circle. In the center lay a stone bowl filled with clear, still water. As he knelt, the gear pulsed brighter, and the water shimmered, reflecting not his face, but a swirling pattern of stars and gears. A young boy kneeling beside a stone bowl filled with glowing water, his face lit by the reflection of swirling stars and gears. Night sky above, mossy stones in a circle around him, soft golden light from a small gear in his pocket. Rusty leaned closer, his breath barely a whisper. The water's surface rippled, and the stars and gears swirled into a map, a tiny, glowing map, with a single blinking dot. He knew that dot was him. And ahead, another dot waited, pulsing like a heartbeat. The gear in his pocket chimed once, clear and bright. Rusty smiled. He understood now. The path wasn't lost. It was just waiting to be followed. He stood, thanked the silent water, and turned toward the next signpost. A young boy in a worn jacket stands in a moonlit forest clearing, touching a glowing crystal that melts into dewdrops. A tiny, starlit bird with shimmering feathers awakens and lands on his shoulder. Background shows a deep blue sky with faint constellations and tangled root paths. Rusty followed the trail of faint, silver light that the map had left in his mind. It led him through a tunnel of tangled roots and softly humming stones, until he reached a clearing where the sky was a deep, velvet blue. In the center stood a single tall crystal, and within it, a tiny, sleeping bird. The gear in his pocket hummed louder. He touched the crystal, and it melted away like morning frost. The bird woke, shook its feathers of starlight, and perched on his shoulder. Rusty laughed. "I think we're almost there," he whispered. A young boy with a glowing bird on his shoulder stands under a stone arch in a twilight village. Rooftops are dotted with tiny lanterns. Soft golden light spills from the arch as the scene shifts from dark blue to warm amber. Whimsical children's book illustration style. Watercolor texture. Rusty walked on, the starlight bird glowing softly by his ear. The trees parted to reveal a village nestled in a curl of the hills, where every rooftop shimmered with tiny lanterns. In the center of the square stood a stone arch, carved with the same spirals from his map. As he stepped beneath it, all the gears in his pocket chimed at once, and the world swam into warm, golden light. Rusty blinked. He was home. Not the place he had left, but the one he had always been meant to find.